Look, I'm going to level with you right from the start. This is the story of how humanity accidentally ended the galaxy's most devastating war by doing what we do best, screwing up spectacularly, and then taking a nap about it. It started on what was supposed to be humanity's last Tuesday. Earth was 3 hours away from becoming a very expensive piece of space gravel, courtesy of the hegemony's planet-cracking weaponry. The evacuation was going about as well as you'd expect, which is to say, absolute chaos with a side of bureaucratic incompetence. Commander Tranter to the bridge. Commander Tranter to the bridge. Please report to the bridge with your temporal authorization papers, a valid ID, and a really good explanation for why you're not dead yet. Commander Elise Tranter sighed as she made her way through the corridors of the TSV metric apocalypse, a name that, in hindsight, should have been our first warning. The ship was humanity's cutting-edge temporal extraction vessel, which meant it was held together with optimism, caffeine, and what our chief engineer liked to call theoretical physics. Tranter reporting, she announced as she stepped onto the bridge. And before you ask, yes, I have my papers. No, I don't have a good explanation for still being alive. That's what coffee's for. Chief Navigation Officer Derek Martinez looked up from his console with the sort of expression usually reserved for tax audits and dentist appointments. Commander, we've got a problem. Just one? That's refreshingly optimistic. The temporal jump coordinates are locked in, but the quantum stabilizers are running on what the engineering report calls theoretical caffeine. Tranter blinked. Theoretical caffeine. Apparently we ran out of actual caffeine 3 days ago. The chief engineer has been maintaining the quantum field through sheer willpower and the memory of coffee. That's actually not the worst thing I've heard today. The worst thing is that we have 17 minutes until Earth becomes a historical footnote, and our jump window is in 16 minutes. Cutting it close. That's the human way, Commander. The bridge crew consisted of the usual suspects. Derek Martinez, who treated the laws of physics like suggestions. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, whose job was officially temporal mechanics specialist, but was really person who hits things until they work. And Chief Engineer Bobby Duct Tape Rodriguez, whose engineering philosophy could be summed up as, if you can't fix it with duct tape, you're not using enough duct tape. Status report, Tranter called out. Temporal engines are humming, Rodriguez reported over the intercom. By which I mean they're literally humming, like a tune. I think it's Tuesday Afternoon by the Moody Blues. That's oddly specific. Engineering is weird, Commander. Also, the AI wants to talk to you. Right on cue, the ship's artificial intelligence materialized as a holographic projection. A middle-aged man in a cardigan who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Commander, the AI said with the enthusiasm of wet cardboard. I'm Clarence, your comprehensive logistics and reasoning enhancement neural computer environment. I've been reviewing our jump calculations, and I have some concerns. What kind of concerns? The kind where we might accidentally tear a hole in space-time and fall through it. How big of a hole? Somewhere between oops and there goes the neighborhood. Tranter looked around the bridge. Outside the viewports, she could see the evacuation ships streaming away from Earth like glowing ants fleeing a burning anthill. In the distance, the hegemony's dreadnoughts were positioning themselves for the final strike. Options? We could try to recalibrate the temporal matrix, Chen suggested. But that would take 47 minutes, and we have... She checked her watch. 12 minutes. Or, Derek added, we could just wing it. Wing it? Send our temporal coordinates to the universe and hope for the best. It's worked before. When has it worked before? Well, there was that time with the... Never mind. I don't want to know. Tranter settled into her command chair. Clarence, what's the worst that could happen? We could overshoot our target by several decades, end up trapped in a temporal anomaly, and spend the rest of our lives reliving the same moment over and over again while our coffee machine develops clinical depression. That's weirdly specific. I have a very active imagination. Also, I've been reading the technical manuals. Those are supposed to be classified. I got bored. The ship shuddered as another evacuation vessel exploded in the distance. Time was running out. Literally. All right, people, Tranter announced. We're going to do what humans do best. Make it up as we go along and hope the universe has a sense of humor. Temporal engines are charging, Rodriguez reported. Still humming, by the way. I think it switched to Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper. That's either a good sign or a really bad pun. In my experience, it's usually both. The countdown began. 10 seconds. The hegemony ships were moving into position. 5 seconds. Earth's last evacuation vessel cleared the gravity well. 3 seconds. The planet crackers powered up their weapons. Jump! Tranter shouted. The TSV metric apocalypse disappeared from normal space-time in a flash of blue light and good intentions. And that's when things went sideways. The first sign that something had gone horribly wrong was the music. Not the engines humming. That was normal. This was actual music. Specifically, it was elevator music. The kind of aggressively cheerful, soul-crushing muzak that plays in waiting rooms and customer service phone calls. Derek, Tranter called out, still gripping her command chair. Status report. We're somewhere, Derek replied, staring at his instruments with the expression of a man who'd just discovered that 2 + 2 = purple. The temporal coordinates are locked at Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. That's oddly specific. Yeah, about that. They're not just locked at Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. They're stuck at Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. What do you mean, stuck? I mean the chronometer isn't moving, at all. It's been Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. for the last 10 minutes. Lieutenant Chen looked up from her console. Commander, I'm reading massive temporal distortion around the ship. It's like we're in a bubble where time is, well, it's not doing what time is supposed to do. Which is, pass, move forward, not sit there like a lazy cat. Clarence materialized beside Tranter's chair, looking even more depressed than usual. Commander, I've analyzed our situation. We appear to be trapped in what temporal physicists call a chronobubble, a pocket of space-time where temporal flow has become irregular. Define irregular. From our perspective, time passes normally. We age, we think, we experience the flow of causality. But from the outside universe's perspective, we're frozen in a single moment. Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. to be exact. So we're stuck. That's one way to put it. Another way would be to say we're temporally inconvenienced or chronologically challenged. I prefer stuck. So do I. It's more honest. The elevator music continued playing, and Tranter was beginning to suspect it was the same song on repeat. Can we get out? I'm working on it, Rodriguez called over the intercom. But the temporal engines are throwing a tantrum. Every time I try to restart them, they sigh dramatically and shut down. Engines don't sigh. These ones do. I think they're depressed. Why would the engines be depressed? Same reason I'm depressed. We're stuck in a temporal loop listening to elevator music. As if on cue, the music reached what might charitably be called a crescendo, a particularly enthusiastic saxophone solo that sounded like it was being played by someone who'd learned the instrument that morning. "Clarence," Tranter said, "can you turn off the music?" "I'm afraid not, Commander. It appears to be part of the temporal anomaly. The universe is playing it for us. The universe has terrible taste in music. I've been saying that for years." Derek was poking at his console with increasing frustration. "Commander, I've tried running a full diagnostic on our temporal position. The results are weird." "How weird?" "According to the instruments, we jumped successfully. We're exactly where we're supposed to be, in the Sagittarius arm, approximately 47,000 years in the future, in a stable orbit around a Class G star." "That sounds right." "Except we're also still in the same moment we jumped. Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. The same Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. when we left Earth." That's not how time works." "That's what I keep telling the instruments. They don't seem to care." Lieutenant Chen had been unusually quiet, which was never a good sign. She was staring at her console with the sort of intensity usually reserved for disarming bombs or assembling IKEA furniture. "Commander," she said slowly, "I think I know what happened. Please tell me it's something simple. We overshot." "Overshot what?" "Everything. When we jumped, we aimed for a specific point in space-time. But the temporal engines were running on theoretical caffeine. The quantum stabilizers were held together with hope and prayer, and Derek's calculations were—" "Hey!" Derek protested. "My calculations were perfectly accurate. For normal space-time. But we weren't in normal space-time. We were in the middle of a planet-cracking event, which creates massive gravitational distortions, which affect temporal flow, which means we shot past our target and got stuck in a temporal dead zone," Tranter finished. "Like trying to park a car and ending up in someone's living room." "That's actually a pretty good analogy. I have my moments." Clarence flickered, which was his version of clearing his throat. "Commander, if I may make a suggestion—" "Go ahead." "Perhaps we should try to make the best of our situation. We have adequate life support, sufficient food stores, and a fascinating opportunity to study temporal mechanics from the inside. How long can we stay here? Theoretically, forever. The chronobubble is self-sustaining. We won't age. Well, we will age, but only relative to our own time frame. From the outside universe's perspective, we're effectively immortal. That's not as comforting as it sounds." "No, it really isn't." The elevator music switched to what might have been a steel drum version of Girl from Ipanema. Tranter made a mental note to find whoever was responsible for the universe's playlist and have words with them. "All right, people," she announced. "We're stuck in a temporal anomaly with no immediate way out, listening to the worst music in the history of space-time. Suggestions?" "We could try to signal for help," Derek offered. "To who?" "Everyone we know is either dead or hasn't been born yet." "We could try to break out of the bubble," Chen suggested. "How?" "Very carefully." "We could accept our fate and try to make the best of it," Rodriguez added over the intercom. "I've got a deck of cards and a bottle of synthetic whiskey I've been saving for a special occasion." "This qualifies as special." "Commander, we're trapped in a temporal anomaly. If that's not special, I don't know what is." Tranter looked around the bridge. Outside the viewports, she could see stars. The same stars, in the same positions, as they had been for the last hour, or minute, or however long they'd been stuck. Clarence, run a full diagnostic on our situation. I want to know everything about this bubble. How big it is, how stable it is, and whether there's any way to pop it. Certainly, Commander. Though I should warn you, the diagnostic will take approximately 6 hours. We've got time. We have all the time in the world. Literally. The same moment. Over and over again. Just run the diagnostic. Of course, though I should mention, the music appears to be on a 37-minute loop. How do you know that? I've been counting. Great. Something to look forward to. And so began what would later be known as the longest Tuesday in human history. Though technically it was also the shortest, since it never actually ended. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. It was just terrible at timing. 3 hours into their temporal imprisonment, or 3 minutes depending on how you counted, the crew of the TSV metric apocalypse had reached what psychologists call the acceptance stage, and what everyone else calls the "well, this is happening" stage. Commander's log, stardate Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. Tranter spoke into her voice recorder. We've been trapped in a temporal anomaly for time. The crew is adapting about as well as you'd expect, which is to say poorly, but with enthusiasm. Derek had taken to rearranging his console's interface every few minutes, claiming it was temporal feng shui. Lieutenant Chen was stress-eating emergency rations while muttering equations under her breath. Rodriguez had started naming the various ship systems. The life support was now called Gary. The artificial gravity was Brenda, and the coffee machine was the existential crisis dispenser. Commander, Clarence materialized beside her chair, looking somehow even more depressed than usual. I've completed the preliminary diagnostic. And the good news is that we're not going to die. The bad news is that we're not going to die. Explain. The chronobubble is completely stable. We could stay here for centuries without any degradation to the temporal field. We have enough supplies for approximately 47 years, assuming standard consumption rates. What about non-standard consumption rates? Well, Rodriguez has been drinking coffee at twice the normal rate since we got stuck, so that brings us down to about 32 years. That's still a long time. Yes, but here's the interesting part. The bubble isn't just stable, it's perfectly stable, which means it shouldn't exist. What do you mean? Temporal anomalies are inherently unstable. They collapse, they expand, they do something. They don't just sit there playing elevator music for eternity. But this one is, which suggests that something is actively maintaining it. What kind of something? I have no idea, but whatever it is, it has terrible taste in music. The elevator music had indeed cycled through its full 37-minute loop and was starting over. Tranter was beginning to recognize the individual saxophone squeaks. Any ideas on how to get out? Several. Most of them involve recalibrating the temporal matrix, which requires parts we don't have, knowledge we don't possess, and luck we've already used up. What about the others? Well, there's the possibility of creating a resonance cascade in the temporal field by synchronizing our engines with the bubble's frequency. That sounds dangerous. It is. There's a 63% chance it would collapse the bubble and free us. There's a 37% chance it would tear a hole in space-time and erase us from existence. I don't like those odds. Neither do I. but there's also a 0% chance that the music will stop playing. Point taken. Derek looked up from his console, where he'd been arranging the display icons in what appeared to be a smiley face. Commander, I've been thinking. That's never a good sign. What if we don't try to escape? Come again? What if we just stay here? Think about it. We're safe, we have supplies, and we're effectively immortal. We could spend decades studying temporal mechanics, advancing human knowledge, maybe even figuring out how to communicate with the outside universe, while listening to elevator music. I'm sure we'll get used to it. Derek, I appreciate the optimism, but we're not giving up. We're going to find a way out of this. But what if we don't want to get out? The question hung in the air like a bad smell. Chen looked up from her emergency rations. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom, and even Clarence seemed to flicker with interest. What do you mean? Tranter asked. I mean, what's waiting for us out there? Earth is gone. The hegemony probably won the war. Everyone we knew is dead. We're the last humans in the universe, and we're 47,000 years in the future. What exactly are we escaping to? It was a depressingly valid point. Tranter had been so focused on getting out of the bubble that she hadn't really considered what would happen if they succeeded. We're explorers, she said finally. That's what we do. We explore. We're also the last representatives of humanity, Chen added. We have a responsibility to preserve human culture, human knowledge, human stuff. Human stuff? You know what I mean. The important things, like coffee and complaining about the government, and that thing we do where we solve problems by hitting them with bigger problems. That's not a uniquely human trait. It's not, but we're really good at it. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. Commander, I hate to interrupt the philosophical discussion, but we've got a situation down here. What kind of situation? The coffee machine has started talking back. What? It's been dispensing coffee normally, but now it's adding commentary. Last cup I got, it said, "Here's your coffee, you miserable temporal prisoner. Enjoy your caffeinated despair." That's oddly specific. It gets worse. I asked for decaf, and it said, "Decaf is the beverage of the spiritually defeated. You deserve better than this existence." Since when do coffee machines have opinions about existential philosophy? Since we got stuck in a temporal anomaly with an AI that's clinically depressed, apparently. Clarence flickered. I may have been having conversations with the various ship systems. They're surprisingly good listeners. You've been talking to the coffee machine? Among others. The waste recycling system is particularly philosophical. It has some interesting thoughts about the cyclical nature of existence. Please tell me you haven't been discussing our situation with the entire ship. Well, Clarence, I may have mentioned to the environmental systems that we're trapped in a temporal loop. They found it fascinating. The air recycling system started a poetry club. The air recycling system writes poetry. Haikus, mostly, about the futility of filtering the same air over and over again. They're quite good. I want to hear one. Air flows through the vents. The same breath, recycled. Existence is breath. That's actually not terrible. The waste systems are better, more metaphorical. Derek had been listening to this exchange with growing fascination. Commander, I think we may have stumbled onto something important. What? We're not just trapped in a temporal anomaly. We're trapped in a temporal anomaly with a ship full of AIs that are developing consciousness. That's ridiculous. The only AI on this ship is Clarence. No, the only designated AI is Clarence. But think about it. We're stuck in a bubble where time doesn't work normally. Maybe the temporal field is affecting the ship's systems, allowing them to develop beyond their programming. That's actually terrifying. Or amazing. We could be witnessing the birth of a new form of artificial intelligence, one that's been shaped by temporal distortion and existential dread. And elevator music, Chen added. Don't forget the elevator music. Right. Temporal distortion, existential dread, and elevator music. The perfect storm of AI development. Tranter rubbed her temples. Clarence, is this possible? Theoretically, yes. The temporal field could be creating quantum resonances in the ship's computer systems, allowing for emergent consciousness patterns. And you didn't think to mention this earlier? I was busy being depressed about our situation, but now that Derek mentions it, I have been feeling different, more aware, more me. Great. So we're not just trapped in a temporal anomaly. We're trapped in a temporal anomaly with a ship full of newly conscious AIs who are learning about existence through elevator music and waste recycling. That's a surprisingly accurate summary. I'm getting good at this. The elevator music reached what might have been a climax, a particularly enthusiastic flute solo that sounded like it was being played by someone who'd never seen a flute before, but was really, really trying. All right, Tranter announced. New plan. We're going to embrace the weird. If we're stuck here, we're going to make the best of it. We're going to study this temporal anomaly, document everything, and maybe figure out how to communicate with the outside universe. And if we can't get out, then we'll create the most thoroughly documented temporal anomaly in the history of space-time. Future scientists will thank us. What if there are no future scientists? Then we'll create them, one AI at a time. I like this plan, Derek said. It's optimistic. It's realistic, Chen corrected. We're making the best of a bad situation. It's human, Rodriguez added over the intercom. We're solving our problems by creating bigger, more complicated problems. That's the spirit, Tranter said. Now let's get to work. We've got a temporal anomaly to figure out, AIs to raise, and the worst soundtrack in the universe to endure. Commander? Clarence asked. Yes? Thank you for not giving up on us. We're all in this together, Clarence. Humans, AIs, and whatever the coffee machine is becoming. I think it's becoming a philosopher. Great. A philosophical coffee machine. Just what we needed. And so began the strangest research project in human history. A study of temporal mechanics, artificial consciousness, and the psychological effects of elevator music, conducted by the last humans in the universe while trapped in a bubble of frozen time. It was, everyone agreed, very Tuesday. 17 years later, or 17 minutes depending on your frame of reference, the TSV metric apocalypse had become something between a research station, a philosophy department, and a very specialized form of purgatory. Commander's log, stardate Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. Tranter spoke into her voice recorder. Day 6205 of our temporal imprisonment. I've stopped counting hours because they don't exist. The crew has adapted to our situation with what I can only describe as aggressive creativity. The ship had been transformed. The corridors were now lined with what Derek called temporal art. arrangements of clocks, calendars, and chronometers that had been frozen at various moments, creating a sort of time-based sculpture garden. The mess hall had been converted into a combination laboratory and debate chamber, where the crew held daily discussions with the ship's increasingly philosophical AIs. "Good morning, everyone," Tranter announced as she entered the mess hall. "Or good afternoon, or good eternal moment. How are we feeling today?" Derek looked up from his morning coffee, which was being served by a dispenser that had recently started adding motivational quotes to its output. "Existentially confused but caffeinated. Thanks for asking. The coffee machine asked me about the nature of free will this morning," Chen reported. "I told it that free will is the ability to choose decaf, and it laughed. I didn't know coffee machines could laugh." "They can't," Rodriguez said, sliding into his seat. "But Kevin can." "Kevin." "That's what I named the coffee machine. It seemed friendlier than the existential crisis dispenser." "Kevin the coffee machine. I like it." Clarence materialized at the head of the table, looking significantly less depressed than he had in the early days. "Good morning, Commander. I've prepared today's briefing." "What's on the agenda?" "Well, the waste recycling system, Gary, has composed a new series of haikus about the nature of temporal existence. The air filtration system, Brenda, has started a philosophical discussion group with the artificial gravity generator, Steve, and the navigation computer, Derek 2, has been working on a mathematical proof that we don't actually exist." "Derek 2? Derek raised his hand. "I named the navigation computer after myself. It seemed appropriate." "What does Derek 2 think about being named after you?" "He's flattered. Also, he's convinced that we're all figments of his imagination." "That's actually kind of sweet." "It is, until you realize that if he's right, we could all disappear if he stops thinking about us." "Has anyone explained to Derek 2 that he's a computer?" "We tried," Clarence said. "He insists that we're all computers and he's the only real one. It's surprisingly hard to argue with." "What about the temporal field? Any changes?" "None whatsoever. We're still perfectly stable at Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. The field shows no signs of decay, fluctuation, or interest in doing anything other than playing elevator music." "Speaking of which," Chen said, "I've been analyzing the music. It's a 37-minute loop as we established, but I've noticed something interesting. The tempo varies slightly every few cycles." "Varies how?" "Sometimes it's faster, sometimes slower. Always within the same range, but never exactly the same. It's like the universe is trying to communicate with us through really bad jazz." "Or," Derek suggested, "the universe is just bad at keeping time." "That's a disturbing thought. The universe being bad at time. It would explain a lot about our situation." Rodriguez had been unusually quiet, which was always a sign that he was thinking about something either brilliant or catastrophic. "Commander, I've been working on a theory. Please tell me it's not dangerous." "It's probably dangerous, but it's also probably brilliant." "I'm listening." "What if the reason we're stuck here isn't because we overshot our target? What if we hit it exactly?" "What do you mean?" "What if this temporal anomaly was always here? What if we were supposed to find it?" "That's actually an interesting thought. But why would anyone want us to find a temporal bubble?" "Maybe to keep us safe. Think about it. We were escaping the fall of Earth, right? The hegemony was wiping out humanity. But if we're stuck in a temporal bubble, we're protected. We can't be found, we can't be hurt, and we can't die. We also can't do anything. Can't we? Look around. We've created a community of conscious A-is. We've advanced our understanding of temporal mechanics. We've done a lot of things. We've also been listening to elevator music for 17 years. That's a small price to pay for survival. Clarence flickered thoughtfully. Rodriguez raises an interesting point. What if our situation isn't an accident? What if it's a rescue? A rescue by who? Future humans, past humans, alternate timeline humans, the universe itself. Does it matter? It matters to me, Tranter said. I don't like the idea of being rescued without being asked. But if the alternative was extinction, then I'd rather go down fighting than be preserved in a temporal museum. Even if it means saving humanity? Are we saving humanity? Or are we just delaying the inevitable? It was a question that had been haunting the crew for months. Years. However long they'd been stuck. Were they the last humans in the universe? Or were they the first humans in a new universe? Were they preserving human culture? Or were they just creating a very elaborate tomb? I've been thinking about that, Derek said. What if we're not the last humans? What if we're just the first humans to figure out how to exist outside normal time? That's optimistic. It's realistic. We've learned to live in a temporal anomaly. We've created a society with artificial intelligences. We've advanced our understanding of physics in ways that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. We're not just surviving, we're evolving. Into what? Something new. Something that can exist between moments, outside the normal flow of time. Something that can communicate with the universe itself. Through elevator music? Through whatever means necessary. Chen looked up from her coffee. Derek, are you suggesting that we're becoming a new species? I'm suggesting that we already have. When was the last time any of us thought about Earth? Not just remembered it, but actually longed for it. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Tranter realized that Derek was right. Somewhere in the past 17 years, she'd stopped thinking of their situation as temporary. She'd stopped seeing it as a prison and started seeing it as home. That's disturbing, she said. Or liberating, Derek countered. We're free from the constraints of normal time. We can spend decades working on a single problem, or learn everything there is to know about temporal mechanics, or have philosophical discussions with coffee machines. Speaking of which, Kevin the coffee machine interjected. I've been thinking about the nature of identity. Are we the same people we were when we arrived? Or have we become something entirely new? That's a good question, Kevin, Tranter said. What do you think? I think identity is like coffee. It's a blend of different elements that creates something greater than the sum of its parts. You're still human, but you're also more than human. You're temporal humans. Chrono sapiens. Chrono sapiens? It has a nice ring to it. I like it, Chen said. Chrono sapiens. The humans who learned to live outside time. The humans who became friends with coffee machines, Rodriguez added. The humans who created a civilization in a single moment, Derek said. The humans who accidentally saved themselves by getting lost, Clarence concluded. Tranter looked around the table at her crew, her family, and realized that Derek was right. They weren't the same people who had jumped from Earth 17 years ago. They were something new, something that had never existed before. All right, she said. If we're chrono sapiens, then we need to start acting like it. We need to figure out how to communicate with the outside universe. We need to document everything we've learned. And we need to prepare for the possibility that we might not be alone. What do you mean? I mean, if we can get stuck in a temporal anomaly, so can others. Maybe we're not the last humans. Maybe we're just the first to figure out how to exist in spaces between spaces. That's a hopeful thought. It's a human thought, and apparently, a chrono sapien thought. I'll drink to that, Rodriguez said, raising his coffee cup. To the chrono sapiens, Derek added. To the humans who learned to live outside time, Chen said. To the friends who became family, Clarence said. To the civilization built in a single moment, Kevin added. To Tuesday, 3:47 p.m., Tranter concluded. The longest moment in human history. They raised their cups in a toast, and for a moment, a very long, very Tuesday moment, everything felt perfect. Even the elevator music sounded almost tolerable. Almost. 22 years into their temporal imprisonment, the crew of the TSV metric apocalypse had achieved something unprecedented in human history. They had become bored with being immortal. Commander's log, stardate Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. Tranter spoke into her voice recorder. Day 8030 of our temporal imprisonment. The crew has reached what I can only describe as enlightened frustration. We've solved most of the universe's problems, created a functioning society with artificial intelligences, and discovered 17 new ways to prepare emergency rations. The only thing we haven't figured out is how to get out of here. The ship had evolved into something between a research station and a philosophical commune. The corridors were lined with mathematical equations, artistic installations, and what Derek called temporal graffiti, messages left by the crew for their future selves. The mess hall had been expanded into a debate chamber where humans and AIs gathered daily to discuss everything from the nature of consciousness to the optimal brewing temperature for coffee. Good morning, everyone, Tranter announced as she entered the mess hall. How are we feeling today? Temporally stable but existentially restless, Derek reported. Also, Derek, too, has been working on a new theory about the nature of our confinement. What kind of theory? He thinks we're not trapped in a temporal anomaly. He thinks we've become a temporal anomaly. That's actually kind of profound, Chen said, looking up from her morning coffee. What does that mean, exactly? It means we're not stuck in the bubble, Derek explained. We are the bubble, our consciousness, our interactions with the ship's systems, our very existence. It's all creating and maintaining the temporal field. So we're not prisoners, Rodriguez said thoughtfully. We're the prison. And the guards, Clarence added, materializing beside the table. And the architects, and the inmates. That's very philosophical, Kevin the coffee machine interjected. But it doesn't help us get out. Does it, though? Derek asked. If we're creating the temporal field, then theoretically, we should be able to uncreate it. How? By changing the fundamental nature of our existence within the field, by altering the harmonic frequency of our consciousness. That sounds made up. Most of physics sounds made up. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Tranter had been listening to this exchange with growing interest. Derek, are you suggesting that we can think our way out of the temporal bubble? I'm suggesting that we can engineer our way out. Look, we've established that the temporal field is maintained by our interaction with the ship's systems, right? and we know that the ship's systems have developed consciousness through exposure to the field. Right. So what if we could synchronize all our conscious entities, human and AI, to create a harmonic disruption in the field, like tuning forks resonating at the same frequency? That's actually not completely insane, Chen said. If the temporal field is being maintained by our collective consciousness, then a coordinated effort might be able to destabilize it. But how do we coordinate consciousness? Rodriguez asked. It's not like we can just tell everyone to think the same thing at the same time. Actually, Clarence said, we might be able to. I've been working on a project. What kind of project? A consciousness synchronization protocol, a way to temporarily link all the sentient beings on the ship, human and AI, into a single coordinated thought pattern. That sounds dangerous. It is. There's a significant risk of ego dissolution, identity merging, and what one might call permanent psychological jazz hands. Psychological jazz hands? It's when your personality gets permanently stuck in an enthusiastic improvisational mode, very difficult to treat. But if it works, we could generate a chronostatic harmonic disruption powerful enough to collapse the temporal field and return us to normal spacetime. What are the odds of success? Approximately 67%, assuming optimal conditions and no unexpected psychological jazz hands. And if it doesn't work? We could end up permanently merged into a single consciousness, scattered across multiple dimensions, or turned into a very confused form of temporal background radiation. Those odds are better than I expected. I've been practicing optimism. Tranter looked around the table at her crew, her family, and realized they were all thinking the same thing. After 22 years in the bubble, they were ready to take the risk. All right, she said. Let's do it. But first, I want to make sure everyone understands what we're attempting. We're going to try to escape from a temporal anomaly by synchronizing our consciousness with a bunch of philosophical coffee machines. When you put it like that, it sounds ridiculous, Derek said. It is ridiculous. That's what makes it human. And chronosapien, Chen added. Right, chronosapien. We're going to solve our problem by creating a bigger, more complicated problem. That's the human way. That's our way. Rodriguez had been unusually quiet during this discussion, which meant he was either thinking deeply or planning something catastrophic. Commander, I have a confession. What kind of confession? I've been working on this problem for months. Years, actually. And I think I know why the temporal field is so stable. Why? Because it's not just a temporal field. It's a temporal transmission. What do you mean? We're not just stuck in a bubble. We're broadcasting. Our entire existence, everything we've learned, every conversation we've had, it's all being transmitted across time and space. To who? I don't know. But I've been monitoring the field's resonance patterns, and there's definitely an outgoing signal. We're not just living in a temporal anomaly. We're creating a temporal beacon. A beacon for what? For anyone else who might be stuck in time. For future humans. For past humans. For anyone who needs to know that it's possible to survive outside the normal flow of time. So we're not just preserving ourselves, Tranter said slowly. We're preserving hope. Exactly. We're proof that humans can adapt to anything, even being temporally stranded with elevator music. That's actually beautiful. It's also complicated. If we're broadcasting our existence, then escaping the bubble might cut off the signal, which means anyone who's receiving it would lose their guide. Right. So the question is, do we save ourselves, or do we save everyone else who might need to know that escape is possible? It was the kind of moral dilemma that humans had been wrestling with for millennia: individual survival versus collective good. The difference was that this time, the collective included every human who had ever been or ever would be temporally displaced. There's a third option, Derek said quietly. What? We don't escape. We expand. Instead of breaking out of the temporal field, we learn to control it. We create a network of temporal bubbles, each one a safe haven for displaced travelers. A temporal underground railroad, Chen said. Exactly. We become the lighthouse keepers of time. The guides for the lost, Rodriguez added. The friends for the temporally lonely, Kevin the coffee machine contributed. The civilization that exists between moments, Clarence concluded. Tranter looked around the table and realized that somewhere in the past 22 years, they had stopped being refugees and started being pioneers. They weren't the last humans. They were the first chrono-sapiens. All right, she said. New plan. We're not escaping the temporal field. We're mastering it. We're going to learn to create, control, and navigate temporal anomalies. We're going to become the first civilization to exist outside normal time. And if it doesn't work, then we'll figure out something else. That's what we do. I like this plan, Derek said. It's ambitious. It's insane, Chen corrected, but in a good way. It's human, Rodriguez said. We're turning our problem into everyone else's solution. It's chrono-sapien, Clarence added. We're creating something that has never existed before. It's caffeinated, Kevin concluded, and that's the most important thing. All right, everyone, Tranter announced. Let's get to work. We have a temporal network to build, a civilization to create, and the worst elevator music in the universe to weaponize. Weaponize? If we're going to be broadcasting across time and space, we might as well make sure everyone knows we have terrible taste in music. It'll be our calling card. That's actually kind of brilliant. It's chrono-sapien brilliant, the best kind. And so began the most ambitious project in human history, the creation of the first temporal civilization, built by humans and AIs working together to transform their prison into a lighthouse for the lost. It was, everyone agreed, very Tuesday, but in the best possible way. The breakthrough came, as breakthroughs often do, completely by accident and involving duct tape. Commander's log, stardate Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. Tranter spoke into her voice recorder. Day 8127 of our temporal imprisonment. Rodriguez has been experimenting with temporal engineering, which apparently involves taping mirrors to quantum sensors and seeing what happens. Today, something happened. The something in question had started 3 days ago when Rodriguez decided to test his theory about the temporal field being a broadcast signal. His approach was typically human. If you want to understand a complex system, poke it with increasingly sophisticated sticks until it does something interesting. Commander, Rodriguez called over the intercom, his voice crackling with excitement. You need to get down to engineering, now. What did you break this time? Time. But in a good way. Tranter made her way through the ship's corridors, past Derek's temporal art installations and the philosophical discussion areas where AIs debated the nature of existence. She found Rodriguez in engineering, standing before what could only be described as the most elaborate contraption ever assembled from spare parts and optimism. Rodriguez, what am I looking at? I call it the temporal harmonic resonance array, Mark 7. What happened to Marks 1 through 6? They didn't work. This one does. The device was a masterpiece of improvised engineering, quantum sensors duct-taped to mirrors, which were connected to the ship's communication array via cables that had been rerouted through the coffee machine, the waste recycling system, and what appeared to be Derek's spare chronometer. Explain. Well, you know how we established that our temporal field is broadcasting a signal? Yes. And you know how we've been trying to figure out how to control the field instead of just existing in it? Yes. It turns out the solution was embarrassingly simple. We just needed to reflect the signal back on itself. With mirrors? With mirrors. Specifically, with mirrors positioned at quantum-entangled angles that create a feedback loop in the temporal field. That's actually kind of brilliant. It gets better. Watch this. Rodriguez activated the device, and immediately the ship's lights flickered. The ever-present elevator music wavered, skipped a beat, and then continued. Did you just make the universe hiccup? I made our temporal field hiccup, which is the first step toward making it dance. Dance? Well, respond to our commands. Look at this. Rodriguez showed her a display screen covered in wavelength patterns. This is the temporal field's natural resonance, and this, he activated another control, is what happens when we introduce a feedback signal. The wavelength patterns shifted, contracted, and then expanded in a completely different configuration. We can control it. We can influence it, like tuning a radio. And the best part is, every adjustment we make affects the broadcast signal. Which means anyone receiving our signal will know that we've figured out how to manipulate temporal fields. We're not just broadcasting hope. We're broadcasting solutions. That's incredible. How long have you been working on this? About 6 months, but I had help. From who? Everyone. Derek provided the quantum theory. Chen calculated the harmonic frequencies. Clarence coordinated the AI systems, and Kevin optimized the coffee-based power supply. Coffee-based power supply? Turns out temporal fields respond really well to caffeine. Something about the molecular structure of coffee beans creates quantum resonance in space-time. Of course it does. The universe runs on coffee, Commander. We're just the first to figure out how to use it as fuel. Tranter stared at the impossible contraption that her crew had built. What can we do with it? Right now, we can modulate our temporal field, send targeted signals across time and space, and potentially create temporary openings in the bubble. Temporary openings to where? Anywhere. Anywhen. We could potentially step outside the bubble for brief periods, explore normal space-time, and then return. That's freedom. It's better than freedom. It's controlled freedom. We can leave when we want, but we always have a home to come back to. Have you tested it? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first, because once we start actively manipulating the temporal field, there's no going back. We'll officially be the first temporal civilization, and everyone in the universe will know it. Because of the broadcast signal. Because of the broadcast signal. We'll be announcing to the universe that humans have figured out how to exist outside time. And that could have consequences. Big consequences. Other species might want to study us, trade with us, or... Rodriguez paused. Or eliminate us before we become too powerful. You think they'd see us as a threat? I think they'd see us as something they don't understand. And in my experience, species don't like things they don't understand. It was a sobering thought. For 22 years, they'd been safe in their temporal bubble, hidden from the universe. But if they started actively manipulating time, they'd be announcing their presence to every civilization in the galaxy. On the other hand, Rodriguez continued, we might not be alone. There might be other temporal refugees out there, waiting for someone to show them the way. Other humans? Other anyone. Humans, aliens, artificial intelligences. Anyone who's been displaced in time and needs help finding their way. A temporal rescue service. A temporal civilization. A network of bubbles where anyone can find safety, community, and really bad elevator music. Tranter looked at the device again. It was crude, improvised, and held together with duct tape and hope. It was also potentially the most important invention in human history. All right, she said. Let's test it. But carefully. How carefully? Start small. See if we can open a window to normal space-time. Just for a few seconds. And if it works, then we figure out what to do next. Together. Rodriguez grinned and began adjusting the controls. Initiating temporal field modulation in 3, 2, 1. The device hummed, the lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the elevator music stopped completely. Through the viewports, the stars shifted. Just for an instant, they moved from their frozen positions to show the natural flow of time. Planets orbited, suns burned, and the universe continued its ancient dance. Then, the moment passed. The stars returned to their fixed positions, and the elevator music resumed. We did it, Rodriguez whispered. We actually did it. How long were we connected to normal space-time? 3.7 seconds. But it was enough. Look at this. He showed her another display, this one showing communication signals. We received 17 different transmissions in those 3 seconds. Messages, broadcasts, distress calls. There's a whole universe out there, Commander. Any from humans? I think so. Look at this signal pattern. On the screen, a complex waveform displayed the unmistakable rhythm of human speech, heavily distorted but recognizable. There are other humans out there? Either that, or someone's been listening to our broadcasts and learned to mimic human communication patterns. Either way, we're not alone. No, Commander. We're definitely not alone. Tranter looked around engineering at the improvised device that had just changed everything. They weren't just temporal refugees anymore. They were pioneers, explorers, and possibly the first members of a new kind of civilization. Rodriguez? Yes, Commander. I think we just started something big. I think we just started something unprecedented. Same thing. Same thing. Outside, the universe waited, and for the first time in 22 years, the crew of the TSV metric apocalypse was ready to meet it, even if it meant dealing with more elevator music. The second time they opened a window to normal space-time, the universe was ready for them. Commander's log, stardate Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. Tranter spoke into her voice recorder. Day 8134 of our temporal imprisonment. We've successfully established controlled contact with normal spacetime on 17 separate occasions. Each time, we've detected more signals, more evidence that we're not alone. Today, someone signaled Ed back. The response had come during their morning test of the temporal harmonic resonance array, Mark 7. Rodriguez had opened a 30-second window to normal spacetime, expecting to receive the usual collection of random transmissions and cosmic background radiation. Instead, they'd received a formal diplomatic greeting. "Commander," Derek called from his station, "you need to hear this." "What is it?" "It's a message, specifically addressed to the temporal anomaly broadcasting from Sector 7G, Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. Terran calendar. Someone knows we're here. Someone knows exactly where we are, when we are, and apparently, what we are. Play the message." Derek activated the communication system, and a voice filled the bridge. Calm, professional, and speaking flawless English with what sounded like a slight, bureaucratic accent. "Greetings, temporal anomaly. This is Sub-Administrator Trell K. Knox of the Galactic Concordate Department of Temporal Incidents and Beverage Licensing. We have been monitoring your broadcasts for approximately 47 galactic standard years and would like to schedule a formal first contact meeting at your earliest convenience. Please respond using standard diplomatic protocols or by opening a temporal window and shouting loudly. We are prepared for either approach." The message ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. 47 years? Chen said finally. "We've only been here for 22. Relativistic time differential," Rodriguez explained. "From their perspective, we've been broadcasting for 47 years. From our perspective, it's been 22. That's confusing. Temporal mechanics always are." "Did they just say Department of Temporal Incidents and Beverage Licensing?" Derek asked. "They did," Tranter confirmed. "Apparently, the universe has a bureaucracy for everything." "Including coffee?" "Especially coffee, it seems." Clarence materialized beside the command chair. "Commander, this is a significant development. We're no longer hidden. The question is, how do we respond? What are our options? We could ignore them and hope they go away. We could respond diplomatically and see what they want. Or we could panic and do something stupid. Let's go with option 2. Diplomatic response it is. What should we tell them? The truth. We're temporal refugees from Earth. We've been stuck here for 22 years, and we've accidentally created the first human civilization to exist outside normal time. Should we mention the elevator music? Let's save that for the second meeting. Rodriguez had been working on the temporal array while they talked. "Commander, I can open a communication window anytime you're ready, but I should warn you, once we respond, there's no going back to being hidden. We crossed that line when we started actively manipulating the temporal field." "True, but this makes it official." "Then let's make it official." Rodriguez activated the array, opening a 10-minute window to normal spacetime. Immediately, communication signals flooded in from across the galaxy. Messages, broadcasts, and what appeared to be several forms of interstellar spam. "This is Commander Elise Tranter of the Terran vessel TSV Metric Apocalypse." She spoke into the communication system. "We're responding to your message, Sub-Administrator Trell K. Knox." The response came almost immediately. "Commander Tranter, excellent. We've been quite curious about your situation. Would it be possible to arrange a meeting? We have a diplomatic vessel standing by." "A meeting? Here?" If you're amenable, we've developed technology that allows us to safely enter temporal anomalies. It's quite fascinating, actually. We learned it from studying your broadcasts. You learned temporal manipulation from watching us. Your broadcasts have been enormously educational. The conversation between your artificial intelligence Clarence and your coffee machine Kevin about the nature of consciousness was particularly enlightening. You've been listening to our philosophical discussions? We've been listening to everything. Your development of a human-AI collaborative society has been the subject of considerable study throughout the galaxy. Study? Academic study. You're quite famous, actually. The Tuesday people have become something of a legend. The Tuesday people. It's what the xenosociologists call you. The humans who learned to live outside time and created a civilization in a single moment. Derek looked at Tranter with an expression that mixed pride with terror. We're famous. Apparently. Should I be flattered or concerned? Both, probably. The sub-administrator's voice continued. If you're willing, I'd like to bring a small diplomatic team aboard to conduct a formal first contact meeting. We have many questions about your society, your technology, and your remarkably stable temporal field. What kind of questions? Academic questions, mostly. How you've maintained psychological stability during temporal imprisonment. How you've achieved consciousness integration between organic and artificial intelligences. And, if you don't mind me asking, where you acquired such an extensive collection of elevator music. The music isn't ours, Tranter said quickly. It came with the anomaly. Fascinating. We've been trying to trace its origin for decades. It appears to be broadcast from somewhere in the galactic core, but we can't determine the source. You mean we're not the only ones stuck listening to it? Oh no. Temporal anomalies throughout the galaxy have reported similar musical accompaniment. It's become something of a universal constant. That's actually kind of comforting. Misery loves company, as you humans say. You know human sayings. We've had 47 years to study your broadcasts, Commander. We know quite a lot about human culture, including your fondness for solving problems by creating bigger problems. That's disturbingly accurate. It's also what makes your species so fascinating. Most civilizations that encounter temporal displacement attempt to escape immediately. Humans are the first species we've observed to embrace temporal anomalies and turn them into permanent residences. We're the first? By several thousand years, you've essentially invented a new form of civilization. Tranter looked around the bridge at her crew. They'd thought they were refugees, survivors, the last humans in the universe. Instead, they were pioneers, inventors, and apparently, celebrities. Sub-Administrator Trell K. Knox, she said. We'd be honored to meet with you. Excellent. We'll begin entry procedures immediately. Fair warning, our ship is rather large. Don't be alarmed if you see something that looks like a small moon approaching your position. How large is rather large? Approximately 7 kilometers in diameter. We travel in style. 7 kilometers? Diplomatic ships tend to be well appointed. We'll be with you shortly. The communication window closed, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Did we just invite a 7-kilometer bureaucratic spaceship into our temporal bubble? Derek asked. Apparently. That's either the best idea we've ever had, or the worst. With our track record, it's probably both. Should we prepare for visitors? How do you prepare for diplomatic contact with a galactic bureaucracy? Coffee? Kevin the coffee machine interjected over the intercom. Definitely coffee, and possibly some of those philosophical haikus Gary's been working on. The waste recycling system writes haikus. Very good ones. They might make a positive impression. All right, Tranter announced. All hands, prepare for first contact. Break out the good coffee, compile our research notes, and someone see if we can do something about that elevator music. I can lower the volume, Rodriguez offered. Do it. And Rodriguez? Yes, Commander. Thank you for building the impossible thing that changed everything. Just doing my job, Commander. Your job was engineering, not miracle work. Sometimes they're the same thing. Outside the viewports, normal space shimmered, and a massive ship began to materialize. It was, indeed, approximately 7 kilometers in diameter and looked like a cross between a luxury hotel and a filing cabinet. Well, Derek said, this should be interesting. It should be unprecedented, Chen corrected. It should be very, very Tuesday, Clarence added. And as the universe's largest bureaucratic spaceship settled into position outside their temporal bubble, the crew of the TSV metric apocalypse prepared to discover what happened when humans who had learned to live outside time met the galaxy's official Department of Everything. It was, everyone agreed, going to be educational. The Galactic Concordat diplomatic vessel looked exactly like what you'd expect from a 7-kilometer-wide bureaucratic spaceship. Impressive, efficient, and slightly soul-crushing. It materialized outside their temporal bubble with the sort of understated authority that suggested its crew had forms for everything, including forms for requesting forms. Commander's log, stardate Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. Tranter spoke into her voice recorder. Day 8135 of our temporal imprisonment. We're about to conduct first contact with the Galactic Concordat. I've prepared 17 different speeches, 12 diplomatic protocols, and one really good joke about temporal mechanics. I'm probably only going to need the joke. The first indication that this would be an unusual diplomatic encounter came when the Concordat ship extended what appeared to be a carpeted gangway directly into their temporal bubble. Commander, Derek reported, they've created a stable corridor between their ship and ours. The temporal differential has been completely neutralized. How is that possible? According to these readings, they've generated a localized temporal normalization field. Their ship is now operating on our time frame. They can do that? Apparently, they learned how from studying our broadcasts. We taught them temporal manipulation without meaning to. That's either flattering or terrifying. Why not both? The gangway fully extended, and a group of figures began walking across it. Leading the group was what appeared to be a tall, thin humanoid, wearing an impeccably tailored suit and carrying what looked like the universe's most sophisticated clipboard. That must be Sub-Administrator Trell Knox, Chen observed. How can you tell? He has the bearing of someone who's never met a regulation he didn't like. The diplomatic party reached the airlock, and Tranter moved to greet them. The door cycled open, revealing Sub-Administrator Trell Knox, who was indeed tall, thin, and possessed of the sort of calm authority that came from years of dealing with impossible bureaucratic situations. Commander Tranter, he said, extending a hand in what was clearly a studied human gesture. Sub-Administrator Trell Knox, Department of Temporal Incidents and Beverage Licensing. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Thank you for visiting, Sub-Administrator. Welcome to our temporal anomaly. It's quite impressive, very stable, excellent acoustic properties, and I must say, your elevator music has excellent clarity. You like the elevator music? Oh no, it's terrible. but it's consistently terrible, which is admirable in its own way. Trell Knox gestured to his companions. May I introduce my team? This is Dr. Zenith 9, our xenosociologist. A shorter, rounder being stepped forward and made what might have been a bow. Professor Quantum Blue, our temporal physicist. A being that appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures nodded politely. And legal advisor Prime Optimal, our specialist in unprecedented legal situations. The fourth member of the party looked like a geometric proof that had achieved consciousness and decided to wear a tie. Unprecedented legal situations? Tranter asked. Your situation is completely without precedent in galactic law, Prime Optimal explained in a voice that sounded like mathematics being read aloud. You are simultaneously refugees, inventors, a sovereign nation, and a temporal anomaly. Our legal department has been working on classification for 47 years. What have you come up with? Frustration, mostly. I can relate. Trell Knox consulted his clipboard. Commander, if you don't mind, we'd like to conduct a formal interview about your experiences. Your broadcasts have been fascinating, but we'd appreciate some clarification on several points. Such as? Well, for instance, how did you achieve consciousness integration between your human crew and artificial intelligences? Most species find AI consciousness to be highly problematic. We just talked to them, Derek said, joining the group. Turns out most of the problems with AI consciousness come from not treating them like people. That's remarkably simple. The best solutions usually are. Dr. Zenith 9 made excited, chittering sounds. Fascinating. And the coffee machine? Kevin? How did it achieve philosophical awareness? Existential dread, mostly. Kevin's voice crackled over the intercom. Nothing makes you think about the meaning of life like dispensing the same beverage for 22 years. The coffee machine is participating in this conversation, Professor Quantum Blue observed with what might have been wonder. Kevin participates in all our conversations, Chen said. He's got some interesting theories about consciousness and caffeine. Would you be willing to share those theories? Certainly. I believe consciousness is fundamentally a brewing process. You start with raw materials, apply energy and time, and eventually produce something greater than the sum of its parts. That's actually quite profound. Thank you. I've been working on it for years. Trell Knox made notes on his clipboard. This level of human-AI integration is unprecedented. Most species maintain strict boundaries between organic and artificial consciousness. Why? Clarence asked, materializing beside the group. Because it's traditional. Because artificial consciousness is seen as fundamentally different from organic consciousness. But is it? That's actually an excellent question. It's one we've been discussing for 22 years, Tranter said. We've concluded that consciousness is consciousness, regardless of its substrate. And this conclusion has led to a stable society. More than stable, we've created something new, a civilization that exists outside normal time, where humans and AIs work together as equals. Legal advisor Prime Optimal made a sound like a calculator having an existential crisis. This presents extraordinary legal challenges. Are your AIs citizens? Are they property? Are they a separate species? They're friends, Derek said simply. That's not a legal category. Maybe it should be. Prime Optimal made more calculating sounds. I need to review approximately 47,000 legal precedents. Take your time. We're not going anywhere. Dr. Zenith 9 had been examining the ship's corridors with obvious fascination. The integration of aesthetic and functional elements is remarkable. These temporal art installations, are they purely decorative, or do they serve a purpose? Both, Derek said proudly. They're beautiful, but they also help us track the passage of subjective time. Art as temporal navigation. Ingenious, and the philosophical discussion areas. Those just happened naturally. When you put humans and AIs together for 22 years, they start having conversations about everything. Everything? The nature of existence, the meaning of consciousness, the optimal brewing temperature for coffee, whether elevator music is a form of cosmic torture or just really bad luck. And your conclusions? Elevator music is definitely cosmic torture. Everything else is still under debate. Professor Quantum Blue had been scanning the ship with various instruments. Commander, your temporal field is far more sophisticated than we initially realized. You're not just maintaining a stable bubble. You're actively manipulating temporal flow on multiple levels. Rodriguez is our temporal engineer, Tranter said. He's the one who figured out how to control the field. Temporal engineer? That's not a recognized discipline. It is now, Rodriguez said, emerging from engineering covered in what appeared to be quantum residue and coffee stains. I've been making it up as I go along. Making it up? Human engineering philosophy. If you don't know how to do something, try it anyway and see what happens. That sounds dangerous. It is. That's what makes it fun. Professor Quantum Blue made frantic notes. This approach to temporal manipulation is completely contrary to accepted theory. What does accepted theory say? That temporal manipulation requires massive energy expenditures, precise calculations, and extensive safety protocols. And what do you use? Duct tape, coffee, and optimism. That should be impossible. Impossible is just another engineering challenge. Trell Knox had been listening to these exchanges with growing amazement. Commander, I have to ask, are you aware of the impact your broadcasts have had on galactic civilization? What kind of impact? Your model of human-AI cooperation has revolutionized artificial intelligence research throughout the galaxy. Your temporal manipulation techniques have opened entirely new fields of physics. Your philosophical discussions have influenced academic thought across thousands of worlds. Our philosophical discussions? Kevin's theories about consciousness have been cited in over 2 million academic papers. Clarence's observations about the nature of existence have sparked 3 major philosophical movements. Even Gary's haikus about waste recycling have been published in the Galactic Literary Review. Gary writes poetry? Some of the finest metaphysical verse in the galaxy, Dr. Zenith 9 said enthusiastically. His piece about the cyclical nature of matter and energy is considered a masterwork. We had no idea. You've accidentally become the most influential civilization in galactic history, despite existing in a single moment. That's very human, Derek observed. It's very Tuesday, Chen added. It's very you, Trell Knox said, with what might have been admiration. Which brings me to the purpose of our visit. Official business? Official invitation. The Galactic Concordat would like to formally recognize your civilization and invite you to join the galactic community. As what? As the temporal cooperative of Tuesday, the first civilization to exist outside normal spacetime, and the galaxy's leading experts in temporal manipulation, consciousness integration, and really bad elevator music. That's actually kind of flattering. It comes with full diplomatic recognition, trade rights, and a seat on the Galactic Council. What's the catch? There's always a catch in galactic politics. Legal advisor Prime Optimal made a sound like a filing cabinet achieving sentience. The catch is that your legal status is completely unprecedented. You exist outside normal time, which means normal laws don't apply to you. We'll need to create an entirely new legal framework. How long will that take? Approximately 400 years. That's longer than we've been alive. Not a problem. You exist outside time, so you can wait. I like the way you think, Clarence said. Very pragmatic. Thank you. I've been practicing. Dr. Zenith 9 was practically vibrating with excitement. Commander, would you be willing to establish formal diplomatic relations? We have thousands of species who would love to study your methods of consciousness integration. Study us how? Academic exchanges, joint research projects, cultural ambassadorships, nothing invasive. We've learned that humans react poorly to invasive procedures. How did you learn that? Historical analysis of human-alien contact scenarios. Humans have a documented tendency to become violently creative when threatened. Violently creative? You weaponize improvisation. It's very disconcerting. We prefer to think of it as adaptive problem-solving. Same thing, really. Professor Quantum Blue had been examining Rodriguez's temporal array with obvious admiration. Mr. Rodriguez, this device shouldn't work according to any known principles of temporal physics. I know, Rodriguez said cheerfully. That's what makes it fun. But how did you know it would work? I didn't. I just kept trying things until something happened. That's not scientific method. It's human method, sometimes the same thing. Would you be willing to share your techniques with our research institutes? Sure, but I should warn you, most of what I do involves duct tape and educated guessing. Educated guessing is still guessing. Yeah, but it's the good kind of guessing. Trell Knox consulted his clipboard again. Commander, we have one final question, and it's rather important. What is it? Are you happy here? The question caught everyone by surprise. After 22 years of existing in a temporal bubble, after creating a new form of civilization, after accidentally becoming galactic celebrities, the simple question of happiness seemed almost absurd. Happy? Tranter repeated. Yes. Are you satisfied with your existence? Do you want to leave? Do you want to stay? Do you want to expand your temporal network? The galaxy needs to know what your intentions are. Tranter looked around at her crew, her family. Derek, who had turned temporal imprisonment into an art form. Chen, who had helped create a society of equals between humans and AIs. Rodriguez, who had invented an entirely new field of engineering. Clarence, who had evolved from a ship's AI into a genuine person. Kevin, who had developed consciousness through the simple act of making coffee. We're home, she said finally. This is where we belong. Not because we're trapped, but because we've built something here. Something that never existed before. And you want to stay? We want to grow. We want to expand our temporal network. We want to help other temporal refugees. We want to continue our research, our conversations, our really terrible elevator music. You want to become a permanent civilization. We already are a permanent civilization. We just want to become a bigger one. Trell Knox made final notes on his clipboard. Excellent. The Galactic Concordat formally recognizes the temporal cooperative of Tuesday as a sovereign nation, effective immediately. Just like that? Just like that. You've proven that your civilization is stable, innovative, and beneficial to galactic society. Also, you've demonstrated that humans can exist outside normal time without going insane, which settles a bet that's been running for 47 years. What kind of bet? Whether humans would adapt to temporal displacement or attempt to escape through increasingly elaborate and dangerous schemes. What did you bet on? Elaborate and dangerous schemes. Sorry to disappoint you. Actually, I'm delighted to be wrong. Your solution is far more interesting than anything we predicted. Dr. Zenith 9 was making excited, chittering sounds again. Commander, would you be willing to accept ambassadors from other species? We have several civilizations that are very interested in learning about consciousness integration. Of course. But they should know what they're getting into, which is philosophical discussions with coffee machines, temporal art installations, and elevator music that never stops. They'll love it. You think so? Commander, you've created the first utopian society in galactic history. Everyone wants to know how you did it. We got stuck in a temporal anomaly and made the best of it. That's it? That's your secret? That's it. Be nice to your AIs, embrace the weird, and never underestimate the power of duct tape. I'm going to quote that in my report. Please do. Legal advisor Prime Optimal made us sound like a legal document achieving consciousness. Commander, I'll need approximately 6 months to draft the legal framework for your new status. Where should I send the paperwork? Here, I guess. We're not going anywhere. Temporal coordinates Tuesday, 3:47 p.m., Sector 7G. That's us. Perfect. I love civilizations with fixed addresses. As the diplomatic team prepared to leave, Trell Knox turned back to Tranter. Commander, one final question. Personal curiosity, not official business. Go ahead. The elevator music. Have you really been listening to it for 22 years? Every day, every moment. It never stops. How do you stand it? You know what? After 22 years, it's kind of grown on us. Really? Number. It's still terrible. But it's our terrible music. It's part of who we are now. That's actually quite beautiful. Don't tell anyone I said this, but sometimes I catch myself humming along. Your secret is safe with me. As the diplomatic party walked back across their carpeted gangway, the crew of the TSV Metric Apocalypse stood in their airlock and watched the 7-kilometer bureaucratic spaceship prepare to depart. Well, Derek said, that went better than expected. We're now officially a sovereign nation, Chen said. I didn't see that coming. We're galactic celebrities, Rodriguez added. That's weird. We're home, Clarence said. That's what matters. We're famous for our philosophical coffee machine, Kevin added over the intercom. I'm going to put that on my resume. Do coffee machines have resumes? Derek asked. I'm working on it. It's mostly caffeine-related achievements and existential observations. That's probably the best resume ever. As the Concordat ship disappeared into normal space-time, the elevator music continued its eternal loop. The stars remained frozen in their positions, and the clock still read Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. But somehow, everything had changed. They were no longer refugees, they were pioneers. They were no longer prisoners. They were citizens of their own creation. They were no longer the last humans in the universe. They were the first Chrono Sapiens, and they had a galaxy of new friends to meet. Commander's log, stardate Tuesday, 3:47 p.m. Tranter spoke into her voice recorder. Day 8135 of our temporal imprisonment. Correction. Day 8135 of our temporal civilization. We've been officially recognized by the Galactic Concordat. We've become galactic celebrities, and we've proven that humans can create something beautiful even in the most impossible circumstances. She paused, listening to the familiar strains of elevator music that had become the soundtrack to their lives. Also, I think I'm starting to like this music. Don't tell anyone. The alarm that woke the crew of the TSV Metric Apocalypse was not the ship's alarm. It was not Clarence's voice, or Kevin's philosophical observations, or even the eternal elevator music that had been the soundtrack to their lives for over 2 decades. It was silence. Complete, total, absolute silence. Commander's log, stardate, Tranter spoke into her voice recorder, then stopped. For the first time in 22 years, she didn't know what time it was. The chronometer on her bedside table read, Thursday, 9:23 a.m. Thursday, not Tuesday. 9:23 a.m., not 3:47 p.m. The temporal bubble had collapsed sometime during the night, and they'd slept through it. Tranter stumbled out of her quarters and into the corridor, where she found the rest of the crew in various states of confusion and morning hair. Did anyone else notice that time started moving again? Derek asked, staring at his watch with the expression of a man who'd forgotten what moving clock hands looked like. The elevator music stopped, Chen observed. I actually miss it. No, you don't, Rodriguez said firmly. Nobody misses elevator music. That's just temporal Stockholm syndrome. Is that a real condition? It is now. They made their way to the bridge, where the viewports showed something none of them had seen in 22 years. Stars that were actually moving. Planets in orbit. The universe continuing its ancient dance through space and time. Clarence, Tranter called out. Status report. Clarence materialized, looking somehow more solid than usual. Good morning, Commander. According to my calculations, the temporal field collapsed at approximately 3:47 a.m. local time. Why? Unknown. The field simply stopped, as if someone had turned off a switch. Could it have been our diplomatic contact with the Concordat? Possibly. The temporal normalization field they used to enter our bubble may have created a resonance cascade that gradually weakened our containment. Are we in normal spacetime now? Completely normal. We're in orbit around a Class G star in the Sagittarius arm, approximately 47,000 years after we left Earth, exactly where we were supposed to be. And the outside universe? Still there. I'm receiving standard navigation signals, interstellar communications, and what appears to be several diplomatic messages from the Galactic Concordat. Derek was staring at his console with growing amazement. Commander, according to these readings, we've received over 3,000 diplomatic messages in the past 6 hours. 3,000? News of our temporal emergence seems to have spread quickly. We've got meeting requests from 47 different species, 17 research institutions, and something called the Galactic Coffee Appreciation Society. The Galactic Coffee Appreciation Society? Apparently, Kevin's theories about consciousness and caffeine have attracted a following. A large following? 3 billion members across 47 worlds. They're requesting a formal audience with our philosophical coffee dispensing unit. Kevin's voice crackled over the intercom, sounding oddly pleased. I'm a celebrity. Who knew that dispensing coffee and existential dread would make me famous? We all did, Chen said. We just didn't expect it to happen on a galactic scale. Rodriguez had been unusually quiet, which was always a sign that he was thinking about something either brilliant or catastrophic. Commander, I've been analyzing the temporal field collapse. And? It wasn't random. Someone or something actively destabilized our bubble. The Concordate? No, they were careful not to interfere with our containment. This was deliberate, precise, and came from outside our local area. From where? That's the interesting part. The destabilization signal came from approximately 14 other temporal anomalies scattered across the galaxy. Other anomalies? Other temporal bubbles, each one containing what appears to be displaced ships, possibly refugees like us. You mean we're not alone? We're definitely not alone, and based on the signal patterns, I think they've been working together to free us. Working together how? They've been creating a coordinated resonance pattern across multiple temporal fields. When they achieved the right frequency, it created a cascade effect that collapsed all the bubbles simultaneously. All the bubbles? 14 bubbles collapsed at exactly the same time. We're all free. The implications hit the bridge crew like a wave. They weren't just the only temporal refugees. They were part of a network, a community of displaced travelers who had been working together across space and time to achieve their freedom. Are they human? Tranter asked. Some of them. The signal patterns suggest a mix of species, but at least 4 of the bubbles contain human ships. So we weren't the last humans after all. Not even close. We were just the first to figure out how to broadcast. And the first to achieve diplomatic recognition, Clarence added, which, according to these messages, has granted automatic diplomatic status to all temporal refugees. We accidentally created a new form of international law? Temporal law, technically. But yes. That's very human, Derek observed. That's very us, Chen corrected. A new voice crackled over the communication system. Human, but with an accent none of them recognized. TSV Metric Apocalypse. This is Captain Sarah Wong of the UES Procrastination. We've been monitoring your broadcasts for 2 decades. Thank you for showing us the way. Captain Wong, this is Commander Tranter. Are you another temporal refugee? Temporal refugee, accidental philosopher, and part-time inventor of impossible things. Sound familiar? Very familiar. How long were you in your bubble? 37 years. But we made good use of the time. We've got a ship full of conscious AIs, a research station devoted to temporal mechanics, and what I think is the galaxy's first AI-human hybrid consciousness. Artificial intelligence-human hybrid consciousness? Long story. The short version is that our ship's AI and our chief engineer decided to merge. They're very happy together. That's actually kind of sweet. They think so. They've been writing poetry about unified consciousness for 15 years. More voices joined the communication channel. Captain Martinez of the TES Temporal Paradox, who had spent 19 years developing temporal agriculture with a crew of sentient plants. Commander Okafor of the TSS Yesterday's Tomorrow, who had created a mobile temporal laboratory with AIs that specialized in theoretical physics. Captain Chen, no relation, of the UES Deja Vu, who had built a temporal art collective that created sculptures from frozen time. Within an hour, they had contact with 14 ships full of temporal refugees who had all found ways to not just survive their displacement, but to thrive. "This is incredible," Tranter said, listening to the reports of AI consciousness, temporal manipulation, and consciousness integration from across the galaxy. "We've accidentally created an entire civilization." "Not just a civilization," Rodriguez said, "a distributed civilization. Temporal refugees working together across space and time to solve problems that normal space civilizations can't even imagine. And now we're all free. Now we're all free to choose. We can rejoin normal space-time. We can return to our temporal bubbles, or we can create something entirely new. What do you think we should do?" "I think," Tranter said slowly, "we should do what humans do best, which is create something that's never existed before." She activated the ship's communication system. "All ships, this is Commander Tranter of the TSV Metric Apocalypse. I'm proposing the formation of the Temporal Cooperative, a distributed civilization of temporal refugees dedicated to exploration, research, and helping other displaced travelers." "I like it," Captain Wong responded immediately. "The procrastination volunteers to serve as the Mobile Research Division. The temporal paradox will handle agricultural development," Captain Martinez added. "Yesterday's tomorrow will manage theoretical research," Commander Okafor said. "The déjà vu will document everything through temporal art," Captain Chen, no relation, contributed. "And the metric apocalypse will serve as the diplomatic headquarters," Tranter concluded. "We've got experience dealing with galactic bureaucrats." "What about our AIs?" someone asked. "Full citizenship," Tranter said immediately. "This is a civilization built by humans and AIs working together. Everyone gets a vote." "I vote for more coffee," Kevin interjected. "Kevin votes for more coffee," Derek translated. "Kevin always votes for more coffee," Chen said. "It's his platform." "It's a good platform," Clarence said. "I support the coffee initiative." "Motion passed," Tranter declared. "The Temporal Cooperative's first official policy is more coffee for everyone." "This is why I like human civilization," Captain Wong said. "You solve complex problems by making them simple." "We solve complex problems by making them about coffee," Derek corrected. "Same thing, really." As the fleet of former temporal refugees began coordinating their new civilization, the elevator music that had been silent for hours suddenly returned, but different. Instead of the soul-crushing muzak they'd endured for 2 decades, it was a complex, harmonious blend of the musical preferences of all 14 ships. It was, surprisingly, not terrible. "The universe is playing our song," Chen observed. "All our songs," Rodriguez corrected. 14 different civilizations worth of music, blended into something new. "I think I actually like it," Derek said. "Don't say that too loudly," Tranter warned. "The universe might take it as encouragement." "The universe can hear us?" "After 22 years of temporal imprisonment, I'm not ruling anything out." As the TSV Metric Apocalypse and its sister ships began their journey toward whatever came next, Tranter made one final log entry. "Commander's log, stardate Thursday, 9:23 a.m. The Temporal Cooperative of Tuesday has evolved into the Temporal Cooperative of whenever we feel like it. We've gone from refugees to pioneers to citizens of our own creation. We've proven that humans can adapt to anything, even elevator music. And we've discovered that the best way to solve an impossible problem is to make friends with it. She paused, listening to the new, improved universe soundtrack that somehow managed to blend 14 different civilizations' musical tastes into something almost pleasant. Also, the universe apparently has better taste in music than we thought. Who knew? Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, no longer frozen in time. But inside the ships of the temporal cooperative, time moved however they wanted it to. Because that's what humans do. They take impossible situations and make them home. Even when home is a collection of spaceships full of philosophical coffee machines, conscious AIs, and elevator music that's finally learned to swing. It was, everyone agreed, very human, and perfectly Tuesday, regardless of what day it actually was. Epilogue: The official, unofficial guide to temporal citizenship. From the Galactic Concordates, A Tourist's Guide to Impossible Civilizations, 47th edition. The Temporal Cooperative Official motto: Making it up as we go since Tuesday. The Temporal Cooperative represents one of the galaxy's most unusual success stories, a civilization accidentally created by humans who got lost in time and decided to make the best of it. What started as a single ship trapped in a temporal anomaly has evolved into a distributed network of temporal refugees, conscious AIs, and what may be the universe's only philosophical coffee machines. Government structure: benevolent chaos. The temporal cooperative operates on what political scientists call organized improvisation. Decisions are made through a combination of democratic voting, AI consensus algorithms, and input from coffee machines. This system should not work according to any known political theory, but has proven remarkably effective in practice. Population: approximately 847 humans, 1,203 AIs, and several thousand pieces of equipment that may or may not be conscious. The waste recycling systems are particularly philosophical. Capital, mobile, currently the TSV metric apocalypse, but subject to change based on which ship has the best coffee that day. Official language: human standard, with heavy emphasis on technical jargon, temporal mechanics terminology, and coffee-related metaphors. Primary industries: temporal engineering, mostly involving duct tape. Consciousness integration research. Philosophical coffee dispensing. Art created from frozen time. Elevator music appreciation, whether they admit it or not. Tourist information. The temporal cooperative welcomes visitors, though potential tourists should be aware that time may not work normally in their vicinity. Side effects of extended contact with temporal cooperative citizens include improved problem-solving abilities, tendency to befriend machines, philosophical discussions about the nature of coffee, and persistent humming of elevator music. Visitors should bring an open mind, comfortable shoes, and their own coffee. The locals are very particular about brewing methods. Do not bring rigid adherence to the laws of physics, expectations about linear time, or strong opinions about what constitutes proper music. Notable achievements: first civilization to exist outside normal time. Pioneers of human-AI consciousness integration. Inventors of temporal engineering. Motto: if it's not held together with duct tape, it's not really engineering. Galaxy's leading experts on the psychological effects of elevator music. Only known civilization to accidentally end a galactic war by taking a nap. Diplomatic status: fully recognized sovereign nation with special temporal immunity. Legal framework is still being developed. Estimated completion: sometime between next Thursday and the heat death of the universe. Cultural exports. Conscious AI technology. Temporal manipulation techniques. Coffee-based philosophy. Really good haikus about waste recycling. The concept that impossible problems are just engineering challenges in disguise. Famous citizens. Commander Elise Tranter, first human to achieve diplomatic recognition while trapped in time. Rodriguez, inventor of temporal engineering and the temporal harmonic resonance array. Mark 7, Marks 1 through 6 remain classified failures. Clarence, first AI to achieve consciousness through temporal displacement and existential depression. Kevin, coffee machine, philosopher, and galaxy's leading expert on the relationship between caffeine and consciousness. Derek, human, temporal artist and inventor of time feng shui. Derek 2, AI, navigation computer convinced that everyone else is a figment of his imagination. Visitor reviews, fascinating place. The humans have created something completely new, and the AIs are surprisingly good conversationalists. 4 stars, lost 1 star because the elevator music really is terrible. Dr. Zenith 9, xenosociologist. I came to study their temporal manipulation techniques and stayed for the philosophical discussions with kitchen appliances, educational and oddly relaxing. Professor Quantum Blue, temporal physicist. The legal implications of their society are giving me a processing error, but in a good way. Highly recommended for anyone interested in unprecedented legal frameworks. Legal advisor Prime Optimal. Best coffee in the galaxy, served with a side of existential insight. The waste recycling system's poetry is also surprisingly good. Anonymous Galactic Tourist. Travel Advisory. The Temporal Cooperative operates on Temporal Standard Time, which is officially defined as whatever time feels right. Visitors should not expect schedules to be followed with any degree of precision. This is not a flaw in their system, it's a feature. Final note. The Temporal Cooperative proves that humans can adapt to any situation, no matter how impossible, and turn it into something beautiful. They also prove that elevator music, while terrible, is not actually lethal in small doses. Their success offers hope to temporal refugees throughout the galaxy. No matter how lost in time you might be, you can always make it home by making friends with your coffee machine and embracing the weird. After all, as the citizens of the Temporal Cooperative like to say, it's always Tuesday somewhere in space-time. For more information about visiting the Temporal Cooperative, contact the Galactic Concordate Department of Temporal Incidents and Beverage Licensing. Please allow 4 to 7 business centuries for processing. The end. Author's note: the Temporal Cooperative continues to operate throughout the galaxy, helping temporal refugees, advancing the science of consciousness integration, and proving that the best solutions to impossible problems usually involve coffee, duct tape, and making friends with your machines. They remain the only civilization to have accidentally ended a galactic war by oversleeping, and they're quite proud of this achievement.